Good evening. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of University Place, and I'm calling the January 17th, 2023 University Place City Council meeting to order. And with that, we'll start with a roll call, please. Emmy?
Mayor, Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, present.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey here.
Councilmember Fleming here.
Councilmember Belisi here.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa here.
Mayor Worthington.
And Mayor Worthington, present. Thank you. And, excuse me, Councilmember Fleming, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Please join us in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And at this point, I would approve, or I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa makes a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. In a second.
Yes, this is Councilmember Belisi. I second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Any objections to approving the agenda as distributed? Any objections? Any changes? Don't see any. The agenda is approved. And that brings us to presentations. And so this evening we have, as is our tradition, a annual recap of the previous year with our annual report. And Mr. Sugg, are you're going to start us off with that, or is that someone else?
We actually have Mayor, the annual report on the state of the city. We've got a video being ready to queue up here, so I'm just going to allow the pull that up, and here we go.
As we look back on the year 2022 in the city of University Place, our list of accomplishments is long and impressive. Let me share just a few of the highlights. Our outstanding public safety team, led by University Place Police Chief Greg Primo, worked tirelessly on the community outreach and education to support the City Council's goals of making public safety a top priority.
County 332 received and route the call.
The UP Police Department hosted several stakeholder, business, and community forums to help explain issues of police staffing and long-term funding. A dedicated website, social media content, and several mailings provided regular updates and opportunities for the community to engage on this critical issue that affects all of us. The Planning and Development Services Department oversaw 4 major new or redevelopment projects across the city. Yay. Several of which are repurposing vacant or abandoned properties into vital new residential communities to meet our growing housing demand. Business also was booming in UP during 2022. The city now has almost 1,700 licensed businesses, 300 of which were issued in the last year alone. Thanks to more than $7.4 million in federal, state, and county grants over the past year, we were able to continue significant public works projects across the city, including safety improvements to Chambers Creek Road, 67th Avenue, 70th Avenue, 40th Street, Cirque Drive, Grandview Drive, and 57th Avenue. The long-awaited Alameda Drive extension was completed, opening a critical arterial between 67th Avenue and Cirque Drive. Public Works staff also continued to support pedestrian safety by maintaining and repairing over 23 miles of sidewalks. We also continued to protect our cherished public parks with improvements at Homestead Park and our first pedestrian bridge in Kobayashi Park. In November, we honored all the men and women from our community who have served in the armed forces with the dedication of our new Veterans Memorial Plaza at Cirque Park. And thanks to the easing of the pandemic restrictions, we're able to once again do what we do best in UP, have fun. 2022 saw the return of treasured community events such as Duck Days, Music on the Square, Movie in the Park, Cider Squeeze, Oktoberfest, and the Christmas tree lighting. These efforts could not have been accomplished without the dedication and commitment of our remarkable city staff. But I also want to thank you, the residents and business owners of University Place, for all you do to take care of our city and each other. On behalf of the entire City Council, we extend our deepest gratitude for your contributions, and we look forward to another amazing year in 2023.
Good job.
I think that's a good job all the way around in terms of our city staff and the things that they've been able to accomplish, and also for the council in terms of the things that this council has set as priorities, provided appropriate resources, and helped to see that we achieved. So 2022 has been a strong year, and we look forward to 2023. Mr. Sugg, you and your leadership team, I wanted to thank you as well, of course, for your leadership and interacting with the council and helping us get the things done that are important to our citizens.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council, for your leadership direction. We certainly kept you busy this past year in improving all the bids and contracts that enabled us to get all of the great work that you saw in that video. It was a very good year. I'm so thrilled about the staff that we have. They get to work on some really exciting projects, and you can see the results and of their efforts. Look forward to 2023. Thank you.
Exactly. Very good. Well, we have a couple of more presentations yet this evening. Shall we move on to those? All right. Well, one of those I've been looking forward to, and we just highlighted a bit of it, but I would like to invite up the University Veterans Plaza committee that has been working on a project to establish the plaza that we saw just a few moments ago in our video. If you could join us here just in front of that TV screen, that would be great. So, thank you. This has been a great accomplishment and a great addition in our community as we put things together. You know, I'm going to ask you to actually stand a little bit in this area and look towards Linda.
And face that way. Yeah.
The person with the camera there. That's great. Perfect.
Or closer to the mayor on this.
Yeah. She knows she's the right stage director here. So all the way over, a little bit closer to me. Yes, you bet. Keep her coming. All right. Very good. Is that enough? You want more of the screen in there? Okay. Because we couldn't help but show off this your wonderful accomplishment here. And so we've put up the screen on the screen the plaza. So. In order to celebrate the completion of this project, which has taken a number of years, and I mention that because of the dedication it's taken to achieve that in that period of over the years, I suspect I would invite one of you here in a moment to tell us just a little bit of the history and all. But first, I'd like to present to each of you a recognition, a proclamation, a certificate of recognition, from the City of University Place on this very important accomplishment for our community. And the certificate of recognition reads, the City Council of the City of University Place would like to recognize each of the four people here, plus Karen Schwartz, who is not immediately available today, for their significant contributions and dedicated efforts to make the University Place Veterans Memorial Plaza a reality in our community. Your outstanding accomplishment has given our community and our neighbors a place to reflect and acknowledge the commitment and honor the sacrifice of those who have gave part of their youth or the entirety of their lives for our freedom. Our deep appreciation for your distinguished service, presented on January 17th, 2023, signed by Steve Worthington, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of University Place. Mr. Lee, this certificate is for you. Mhm. And Ken Treblethorn, this certificate is for you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Oops, excuse me. And Nancy Treblethorn, a certificate for you. Thank you so much for your effort. And Mr. Greg Gooch, thank you so much. Yes. And I will entrust that Karen will get it from your faithful hand. Great. Would anyone like to make a comment?
Mr. Mayor, council members, members of the public that are here, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Veterans Plaza Group. This project started out a little more than 16, almost 17 years ago. And although I have the honor and the privilege of being the president of the 501, and it's a 501c3, it's not a committee, so it is actually a corporation. But I have the privilege of being the president. I'd like to introduce Nancy Treblethorn, the vice president. Howard is our treasurer. Our new secretary, his wife Barbara, is in the back with her camera. And the most important person is Ken. Ken is the architect that designed from ground up the entire Plaza project and defended the many chances that we had to change, modify, or give up. He held it fast as the architect and one of the original people on the group. Then we got to a position where we not only needed financial assistance, but we needed a project manager. And fortunately, Ken, a professional architect, knew how and when and where and everything. Unfortunately, he was too busy working. So God blessed us, and Ken retired and found, as most of us new retired people, that not only does the income change, but time changes. And Ken found it very difficult to not take over as the project manager. And without his energy, we would have totally still been in the fundraising mode. I also want to comment on Lieutenant Commander Bob Schwartz. Bob was our very first 501c3 president. He not only was a gentleman and a wonderful person, but he was a lieutenant commander pilot and a lot of veteran experience. He motivated, stimulated, sometimes dragged, but he kept the project alive. And that's why Bob is always going to be remembered. And Karen, his wife, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, we try to give her the honor of being his widow. So we, as a group, as a corporation, or a committee, because we represent almost the whole body. And before I finish saying thank you, I want to take advantage of UPTV. This is a requirement that we continue to fund this project. So there are forms at the plaza that you can find, and they're online on the website, so that you can purchase or donate for a plaza brick. But we're going to need to maintain the flags and the whole area. So it's an ongoing process, but thank you again very much. Council members, each and every one of you, I know there was a great deal of discussion, budget encroachment, a lot of other thoughts, but I want to thank all of you for all of your support. It's a good partnership. Thank you.
It was a great partnership. Very good. Council, would you like to come down and join us for a photo? All right. Well, just see if we can put a photo up together, so.
Squeeze together as best you can because this is gonna be really tight. Or maybe, yeah. You're gonna have to be closer to this. Or. Okay, smile this way and keep smiling because I'm going to. Sorry, you guys are, there's a lot of you, I wanna make sure I get it. And one more. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you so much. Very good. Oops, excuse me. Sorry, Ken.
Go ahead, you're the
No,
mayor.
yep.
Pleasure to meet you. I'll be retiring in 2 weeks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gooch. Well done. All right, my pleasure.
February 1st. All right. Congratulations. Still on period. Make sure the check shows on March 1st.
And so we have, that was all very nice, an important project that has quite a legacy in our community, I believe. We have yet another distinction this evening and presentation to be made with the help of the Washington State Department of Transportation, and I would invite them to come forward as well today.
All right. Pretty.
Yeah, that's
That looks nice.
Yeah. Okay.
You're good.
There's the person I need to make sure we're in the right spot.
A little closer to the screen, please.
Good evening, and I'd like to say thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to have some time on your agenda this evening. Obviously, a lot of important things happening in University Place and a lot of great recognition, so feel very honored that you were able to squeeze us in this evening. And I'm Jay Dry from the Washington State DOT Local Programs Division. I'm the director. And with us this evening, we've got John Ho, who's our local programs engineer from Olympic Region. And Don Fletcher is one of the key staff that was involved in a project we'll talk about in a minute. And we also have the distinguished honor of having FHWA's Ralph Rizzo, who is the division administrator for the Washington Division, with us this evening as well. So local programs, we have at any point in time about 1,200 active projects throughout the state of Washington. And that's keeps about 400 agencies busy with a number of projects. Some projects you saw in your video earlier this evening, and a lot of things going on throughout the state. And each year, we try to recognize the best projects throughout the state. And so there's up to about 200 projects that would potentially be eligible for recognition. And so for a project to ultimately get nominated and then to be selected for recognition and to receive a excellence award is a very distinguished honor. So this evening, we would like to award the FHWA DOT Local Programs Award of Excellence for the Best City Project to the 56th Street Cirque Drive Phase 3 project, which certainly reflects all the things that we're striving for, project working together in the community, and multimodal, complete streets, and it's just a great project all the way around. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Ralph to maybe let him say a couple words, and then maybe John.
Well, thank you, Jay. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for having us here on behalf of the Federal Highway Administration. Congratulations on earning this award. It's well-deserved. I think, when Congress passed the bipartisan infrastructure law about a year ago, they included a great deal more funding and emphasis on what we call complete streets, which really just means that streets are for everybody, not, whether you're driving a car, riding a bicycle, walking, whatever you're using the street for, it's for everyone, and they should be safe on them. So this is a great example of how that money can be used to make the streets safer for everybody. So congratulations. It's a pleasure to be here, and keep up the good work. And thank you to your staff, too, as well. You did a terrific job. And thank you to state programs. So thank you all very much. John?
Thank you. I want to specifically recognize those two sitting right there, Jack and Stavnori. You guys have been great to work with. We are in the constant changing our program, and we're constantly changing based on different laws being passed, different situations that we're changing. You guys are adopted so quickly and so great to work with in general. So we're both really thankful that your job is great. So thanks.
Well, and we have this nice poster to present to
shall I
the
come
city.
down?
Well, you certainly can. We can present the poster to you, and normally we would have this beautiful plaque as well, that I have this virtual plaque, but with all the supply chain challenges that we all are faced with, as they got ready to engrave it, they realized that the plaque was the wrong plaque. So the plaque will be coming when we work out the supply chain challenges as well. So we will share this to be proudly displayed by the city. So congratulations.
We will indeed be very proud of this.
As you should be.
Yes. Beautiful accomplishment. So this is a very special distinction for us. We really appreciate Department of Transportation, Federal Highways, local programs as being key, obviously, you're great partners, help communities like us be able to achieve the things that are important to our citizens. We also are very proud of Yuri and Jack and the whole transportation team and design team that we have, for the most part, in-house. Most jurisdictions don't have that level of talent internal to them. We are blessed to be able to do that, and it shows in our streets and our sidewalk system, and it shows in our community in a lot of different ways. Our citizens know the value of good transportation systems, and they tell us that almost every day. So thank you for the partnership. I appreciate the recognition, and we look forward to the plaque. We'll put it up.
Very nice.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor is a little shy.
The parting of the council. All right. Congratulations.
Well, I didn't even recognize you until I saw the name. Good to see you. It's been a long time. I will.
Thank you.
Take care.
Turn it. Jack, can we see it?
Yeah, can we see it?
Yeah, hold it up, Jack.
Oh, nice.
Very
Congrats,
nice.
guys.
That is awesome.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to be clear, too, this is not a regional award. This is the state city's top program. Very distinctive for our community and shows our staff's talent and how well they serve our citizens. So,
Very nice.
yes, very, very good. Excellent. Well, we've had some great presentations tonight, but we get to move on to yet more things. And next on our agenda is citizen comments, I believe, public comments. So it's at this point in our agenda that we invite members of the public to bring issues of concern or interest to the City Council. We receive those comments either here in person, via the internet, and if you are viewing this electronically, you can see the procedures by which you can request an opportunity to speak. We also will take telephonic or telephone comments as well, and again, that information is on the screen to help you as well. First, we'll look at in-person comments, and this evening we do have one person that is signed up already on the sheet, and so I would invite Chris Saunders to come forward and share your thoughts for us. You have 3 minutes for that.
Hello. Greetings, City Council, City Manager Steve Suggs, and others that are in the room. I'm Chris Saunders, the President of University Place Parks and Recreation Foundation. One of the main roles of the University Place Parks and Recreation is to be a facilitator. We don't actually handle any money. We just put it in another organization to handle the money. For instance, Cal Ripken Senior Foundation is handling all the money for the playground. So we facilitate. And one of the things that has come to our attention is in the goals that we have is to help with recreation. And our goals are to enhance parks and recreation in our community. We thought through that goal very specifically for what I'm about to share with you. As we are working diligently on preparing, marketing, and funding for the building of an inclusive playground here at Cirque Park, we are also doing an informal feasibility study for the use of the baseball fields to be converted over to be able to be used by both able-bodied people and disabled people. We'll come back and talk with you more about that if the feasibility study shows that it is a possibility. But what we are running into is the lack of a recreation department here in University Place. We are struggling with some of the foundations aware that we don't have a recreation department. Therefore, we do have a nonprofit who has stepped forward and said they would be glad to partner with, do part-time, or take on the responsibility of a recreation department for the city. University Place is aware of who they are. They have worked with the city before. They have partnered with you before. They have great customer service. They have excellent organizational skills, and they're ready. What we have looked at, we are very, very aware there are legal ramifications. We need some clear statements of responsibilities, and we would need to establish the processes for that to happen. It's a little different than just renting a facility to have a nonprofit actually help with recreation. That being aware of that, I'm bringing it to you today because I'm aware you are going to discuss this at the retreat coming up. And so I just want you to be aware there is somebody, an organization right here in University Place, more than willing to help you with that. And we look forward to hearing more about what the possibilities could be, and we're open to all suggestions. We hope as University Place Parks and Recreation will help mediate that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saunders, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Do we have any other comments? I don't believe here in the room. Do we have any online comments? And we don't have anyone seeking comments online or phone calls. So that will conclude our public comment section for this evening. And that brings us to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa makes a motion to approve the consent agenda as proposed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I second.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. So we have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Are there any objections to the approval of consent agenda as distributed? Any objections? Seeing none, consent agenda is approved. Brings us to our city manager reports. Mr. Sugg, you have a report this evening.
Council members, last Friday at Cirque Park, the West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition put together a sandbag filling operation for folks, residents of Day Island and Sunset Beach, to come and be able to get some sandbags for their residents, to protect their residents for the predicted king tides predicted for the end of January, which is just around the corner. I want to thank for the West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition. Jennifer Hales is our representative on that, and it was successful. There was 111 handed out, as well as empty sandbags for those that needed to fill them on an as-needed basis. There's sand there at Cirque Park, so it's an effort to help our local folks with a local operation, and I think it was very successful. We'll get some photos up there on the website so people can see. And if people need sand and sandbags, they're available at Cirque Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zuck. Anything further? Or?
No, Mayor, that's it.
All right. Thank you. That brings us to council comments. And let's see, Councilmember Keel.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I just have two comments. First is that in our consent agenda today that we just passed, we talked about, in that was the work plans for the commissions. And in that, we talked about adopting the preliminary work plans. And I'm focusing on the word preliminary, and I'm sure that that's what we mean. I just want to underscore that I'm very much interested in, whenever the appropriate time, that we spend the time to work on those preliminary work plans. Because if you remember the last time we spoke, right. I had some interest in really carving out the work of the work plans, because I think, at least from my view, there's some things that I'd like to see added into at least two of the commission's work, so it's some clarity around what we're doing. So I look forward to that opportunity to finalize their work plans for this year. The second thing I want to raise tonight is, you know that Sound Transit is working on the Hilltop light rail extension coming up from Commerce and going up the hill up to Martin Luther King Way down to 19th. And so that work is all the construction work is done now. And so we're to the point to where we're doing test runs of the train going up the whole length. And the very first test run of that is going to be tonight. Oh. And I will be there. It starts at 11 p.m. and it's going to be over at 1 p.m. So while you all are all home nice and comfortable in the bed, I'll be still representing the city, doing my work. Working at 1 o'clock this morning. Riding the light rail, making sure that it's working fine, so we're all ready to go. So that's my report. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's a memorable milestone, and thank you for staying hard at it there. Councilmember Woods.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Chris, for being here tonight. Actually, you speaking just leads right into the comment I wanted to make. As I met earlier this week, or actually last week, with a gentleman from our community who is very interested in parks and recreation, and specifically was trying to discuss the possibility of getting a pump track for bicycles added to one of our parks. So I referred him to Chris. We talked with Jack. And I just bring it up because he's not the only person who talks to me about parks and recreation. It is very important to our city and our citizens. And when we talk about this on January 28th at our retreat, I really hope we look at what options may be available. Thank you for bringing up the option of possibly a private organization, because honestly, we need a creative solution to get recreation into this community. And so thank you for that, and I just ask that we seriously consider that and whatever other options are available. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for the reminder, Councilmember Wood. And Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you so much. We have some way cool awards we gave out tonight. Kudos to Jack and Nuri, once again, the amazing team that never ceases. I mean, when you think you're amazed and swept off your feet and you think, okay, they've done it all, they've went over the top again. So thank you for all your service and your passion, because I know it goes above and beyond your job description, and we appreciate it. And also to the Veterans Plaza, long time coming, but when I drive down Cirque Park and I see the meaningful flags that are out there, it just makes that park even more of a crown jewel in our city. And it's so gorgeous at night. I mean, it's not like it, but it's similar to when I landed in DC and got off the freeway and I saw the lit government buildings. Well, it kind of brings back some of those memories too. So really beautiful to have that. And I'm so proud that we have it in our city. And I am so excited, Ms. Sanders, that hopefully we'll come to this discussion about recreation. So I'll be there. And I hope, and I pray that it will come to fruition. So we see what happens. And then the first Monday of this month, as usual, is the SHAPE meeting that I attended for affordable housing. That it seems like whenever we sort of get closer to some sort of goal in that, the state pushes it further away. And that's sort of how I'm feeling right now with the upcoming legislative proposals in the state, as in our Senate rather, state Senate, and our House. So I hope our citizens will get on board and make public comment through the virtual site I have on both of those bills, because it's very frustrating that all of the work, all the public input that we have done could be literally, eroded and swept away, and that would be very heartbreaking for our community. So with that, the SHAPE meeting. Carl Schroeder, once again, of the AWC, came and did a report out, and he talked about some of the challenges and the true barriers that have been wrenched in on some of the things that, that they've been trying to do, as well as the developers. They've contacted different stakeholder groups, and it's coming down to state versus city, as we know. That is also in all this decision-making process, making the developers a little more hesitant, because they don't know how far the needle is going to be moved. On top of everything else, all the barriers and roadblocks that we have to go through to make affordable housing and to help augment, the homelessness situation as well. So we also heard from Echo Northwest about single-family homes and how that's changed in the last 20 years. The single-family home is not what it's going to be like in the suburbs. The citizens interested in purchasing those homes want a different type of single-family resident homes, but not to eradicate and go away with the R1 zones, but they do want to have something similar to that, especially when they raise their families. And some of the also constraints is that single-family homes in the last 20 years has been a little more difficult and harder to get funding for. There's limited construction workers to meet the current need, and also the reoccurring and the exponential increase in cost. So you put all those things together and the limited availability for the housing stock, and whatever you build, even if it's affordable now, it's not going to be in the future. And so that's the crest of the matter, that we also, if we're going to put our time, money, and energy into affordability, as I've been saying all along, with the sustainability of it, we must have that in place in order for us to come to any sort of resolution or to put millions of dollars into this effort. We need to know what is the long-term outcome for this. And so, let's see, what else? The other thing we did is the advisory board recruitment process and timeline. So far, there's 9 applicants, and so they would like a lot more than that to come forward, and because they're looking at about 9 to 12 positions being filled. So pass the word on that they need some to fill at least the applications out, so they can have a nice mix, nice candidate pool, so that they can look and recruit for these board positions on the advisory board. You can go on the SHAPE website and pull up the application and the job descriptions, for what the requirements that they're looking for as well. So that's going on, and we're hoping to get all these filled and in place sometime by April or May. And this is the advisory to the executive SHAPE board. And so the final list will come before the SHAPE board for our comment and input. And prior to that, there will be 3 SHAPE board members that will be part of that process going into it. So hopefully SHAPE will shape some of the visions and values that these board members will represent for us. Okay, and then the AWC rep also talked about some of the things we already have on our legislative agenda to support, and gave us some updates on that. And I'll conclude that report. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your continued work on affordable housing for us. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief with my comments. I just wanted to echo what Councilmember McCluskey had said about the parks program. So, Chris, thanks for being with us tonight, and certainly looking forward to hearing more about that as we go. Earlier in our agenda tonight, we appointed several new members to the various boards and commissions the city has, and just wanted to say congratulations to them and to thank them publicly for stepping up to the plate to serve our community. I think they'll, as you know, Mr. Mayor, those that we interviewed, amazing candidates. I mean, when we look at the pool of candidates we're getting these days to serve on our commissions, they are really, truly top-notch. So looking forward to their involvement, engagement in the city, and I think we're going to end up with a good year with great commissioners. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Belisi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to echo Councilmember McCluskey's comments regarding House Bill 1110 and Senate Bill 5190. These are before the state legislature at this point to basically take our local rights away for our single-family zoning, and under the guise of being affordable housing. All it will do is increase the housing density in our neighborhoods. And the worst part is it provides that the Department of Commerce has oversight, not the City of University Place. And for those citizens that are griping and complaining about our densified zoning along our major arterials, I would encourage you to respond and send your feelings into our legislative members and ask them to not support these bills, as it will change the scape and the outlook for the city of University Place and for our single-family zoning. So unless you want your neighbors and everybody else mandated to put two plexes, four plexes, ADUs in your backyards and not provide any associated parking with it, I would suggest that you make some noise at the state legislature at this point before these bills get passed. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Likely for me, there weren't any meetings in my external organizations I'm involved on behalf of the city, but no fear there, because they're going to start up starting Thursday and relentlessly throughout the year. So you'll be hearing some reports thereafter after this week. That being said, I don't think, and Councilmember Bellisi, thank you for mentioning the zoning and the additional bill lots that can occur in a single family, but I think we're going to have to say this many times. I think we're going to have to educate the public through our website. I'm hoping that this administration, through the mayor's recommendation to clearly get this out for those citizens that are listening on our UPTV, those that are looking at our website, our Facebook, we have to let them know what those House bills and Senate bills really mean and what that means for our neighborhoods. We started this whole, like Bellisi said, density along our major arterials like Bridgeport, 27th, and so on, to keep this density off our neighborhoods. And now these bills are doing exactly just the opposite, and that means that there will be no, if it passes, there will be no such thing as a single-family zoning anymore. And so there's a lot of impacts, more negative than positive, I can assure you. If you think affordable housing is the key to this, they're completely wrong. Forget about the issue about who's in control. The whole principle of what they're doing for affordable housing, and that's what the umbrella is under. It's a false principle. It's a false model. I have no idea what they're smoking, but they're not smoking good stuff. And so, and I say that because I don't know what these folks, including our representatives out of this district, Senator Nobles, who sponsored one of those bills, and shame on her. And I'll say that publicly because I don't know what she's thinking, that any one of these legislators think that they can deal with affordable housing through this kind of legislation. It's a boondoggle at best, but it's going to be torture, and it's going to be neighbor against neighbor when you put that many. It's there historically throughout every major city when you bunch up people and density, and it becomes the whole city. It won't be, if you think about our city as being University Place, it won't be a hometown. It will be just a gathering place for people to just move in and move out. This would not be our hometown anymore. Folks, if you're listening, council members, this is a very serious situation. I'm going to be up there in AWC Action Days with the mayor and whoever else is going to go, and believe me, I'm being nice right now because the public is watching me and they know who I am, but in their office, I'm going to be very blunt with them, and certainly it's going to impact our city dramatically in so many different ways, but it's not the answer to affordable housing. Giving people homes and getting them in homes, home ownership and affordable housing are two different models and principles. Home ownership is not for everybody. It is definitely not affordable housing when we talk about homeownership. So that being said, I just on my high horse right now with this, but it's a very serious matter, and I think that we need to getting back to the website, Facebook, whatever we can do to educate our citizens and let our legislators know that we're not going to just take a back seat to something like this. So, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your good comments. So it's my turn. I had a couple of different things going over the last few weeks. Let's see. Let me start with this. Just a reminder for council and for the public. On the 28th of January, that's, of course, our Saturday retreat, the last Saturday of the month, happens to be the 5th Saturday of the month, and the 28th, from 8:30 until about 3 o'clock, we have the city council retreat. Council, I think you've all had a chance to hear what's going on in terms of the agenda, but we will be talking about the things we've touched on this evening: public safety, council goals, and how we allocate what funds we have available to support those council goals. We'll be talking about council vision, or more values as well, and values not of individual council members, but seeing what are the values of a community that we reflect. And then we'll be talking about a couple of other an emerging issue or two as well. It's a public meeting, public's invited, though it's at the Fircrest Golf Club. We're going all the way to Fircrest, but it's okay, we only do it once a year. But in any case, looking forward to having that underway and spending Saturday with you and sharing our thoughts and coming together on a number of issues, which we, I believe, usually always are. So a reminder for council, again, breakfast served from 8, program starts at 8:30, and I think you know where the place is, but if you need an address, I can give it to you later. Then I wanted to mention I attended the AWC Mayor's Exchange, which happened in Olympia at the AWC office last Thursday. And it happens quarterly around the state at various times. I was glad to be there for the day. And a lot of that had to do with the legislative issues. At that point, the legislature had opened 2 days previously, and Carl was there, Carl Schneider, as you mentioned. He talked about some things. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. But along with Candace Bach, the AWC Legislative Director, and then the rest of the legislative staff, along with the Executive Director for AWC as well. And the current President, Rob Patansi, thank you, please. I need to work on that last name. Rob's a great guy, and he has big shoes to fill, but he's working on it. He's doing it. So, anyhow. But it was good to chat with Rob as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about, House Bill 1110 and Senate Bill 5190. So we heard a bit more about that. I did take a break from the conference, or the Mayor's Exchange, and I walked up and had set up appointments with our representatives and with our senator. And so I spent some time with Senator Nobles and had a chance to talk to her about how this was our number one chief objective in our legislative program, was trying not to have the loss of our zoning controls in our community, and as adopted by this council. And she listened attentively. Now, she had the day before signed as a co-sponsor for that bill. Say that again? She had the day before signed as a co-sponsor for Senate Bill 5190. Nonetheless, it was important that she hear our views, and she, I think, was appropriately attentive and had several different questions, and I did my best to address those questions. We talked about a few other issues as well, but certainly that was the centerpiece of the conversation. I had a similar conversation with Representative Levitt in the 28th District, along with Representative Rontowski as well in the 28th. And they were very attentive and I think open as well to hearing what we had to say. One of the things I shared there was some of the things that AWC has going on, and one of which is AWC has just recently conducted a poll that was a statewide poll done in a similar manner to what we used last year for our poll. using both email and telephone surveys, about 500 or so participants statewide, with about a plus or minus of 4.4% on the percentage, which means pretty good poll. That information isn't quite released yet, though I did get a peek at it, but I think it will be helpful in what we have to do and say about this. And AWC is working on how best to make that available. I shared a little of that information, though not too specifically, with our representatives, and they were, and our senator, and they were interested in seeing it when it's appropriate from AWC, and I've mentioned that to AWC. That'll be an important tool. But one of the things I wanted to also talk about is there's something I need to correct. Earlier this evening, we heard about House Bill 1110 as being cities against the state. Unfortunately, I wish that was just it. It is, though, city against city, too. There are cities that are inside feel as though that is an appropriate way to approach this, and that is a difficulty for us. My take on what I was hearing at the beginning of this session at AWC was we need to find middle ground. We aren't going to win the war entirely. We need to find some middle ground. And my particular view is I think we need to talk about this in two parts. One is housing, the other one is zoning. Let's work on that housing affordability piece. Let's not lose control of zoning. And I think as you see that survey, you're going to find out that the state's residents really understand that local government is in the best position to identify local zoning. But we are closer, we understand the people's needs, that when it comes to zoning control. And at the state level, not so much. And so that was, from the survey glimpse that I had, one of the key messages. But I think as we talk about these issues, breaking apart from housing and zoning, those are two different things. They are wrapped together, and in the proposal from the governor and from the other bodies as they list currently, zoning is a key piece to their strategy, but it doesn't have to be that way. And it certainly doesn't have to wrench that control from the citizens here so that they have no honest say about what their density is in their community. That's a key factor. You all talked about this, virtually all of you talked about this as an important issue, and indeed it is. So we have I had a chance to discuss it with the members of the 28th. I'll be at City Action Days coming up in mid-February, and we'll have some other conversations as well. Our representatives were very open, and I think they're still weighing facts and such. And I do appreciate the courtesy that Senator Noble showed. Let's see, there are other issues, but that's really the centerpiece to ours. Wanted to mention that our county council member, Ryan Mello, is now the chair of the Pierce County Council, and he called me as mayor, just to see how things were going with our urban flooding issues, and I just wanted to share his interest in a few where your constituents have some needs that that the county, in one way or another, can help with. We have some opportunity to bring that to their attention. Thank you. I think that covers my comments for tonight. And we'll look forward to moving on to our study session, unless there's important second passes on this, but I don't see that. So, all right. With that, we're going to move into our study session, and we'll conclude the regular meeting into study session now. And with that, also, we're going to invite Kevin Brisky up and Jack Eklund to let's talk about parking meters. So.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Kevin Brisky with the Community and Economic Development Department. Tonight, I'd like to talk about parking management in the Village at Chambers Bay. And I've got a 9-slide PowerPoint to go over some of these points with you. That was included in your packet. First, we'd like to talk about current status and conditions, options for parking management that we looked at, the proposal that we have.
Kevin, I'm sorry. If you wouldn't mind bringing your mic a little closer to you, that would be helpful for me at least.
Thank you.
That information is not in the packet.
Oh, excuse me, it appears that in this packet, we may not have the parking information, so,
So what we're seeing is what you're showing.
yeah, so this is the first we're seeing of it at this point.
Oh, I apologize
So-
for that. I sent it.
We'll listen carefully.
Yes.
I will take a little more time on each slide then. I'll try not to read it verbatim.
That's perfect, that'll help.
Speak really slow.
But wanted to go over just kind of current status and conditions, and this is parking management in the village at Chambers Bay. Go over options for parking management, and then a proposal and with benefits, along with a summary of a meeting that staff held with the businesses located in the village at Chambers Bay. So currently, within the village at Chambers Bay, there's 800 stall garage, which I know everybody is at least here familiar with. It's a 3-level garage. With those 800 stalls, 550 of them are open public stalls. The additional stalls, there are some reserved stalls for residents located in Marketplace Flats and located in Latitude 47. Along Marketplace, so the road fronting right in front of City Hall, running north-south, the main retail road, there are 58 stalls. That's a combination of angled stalls on one side and parallel on the other. On Bridgeport Way, we have 27 back-in angle stalls. And along Market Square, which is the square right in the middle of the village, we have 8 total stalls, 4 on each side. Those are 15-minute signed stalls. In these counts I'm giving you right here, these do not include Whole Foods. Whole Foods has all their own parking with their underground and surface parking, and this doesn't include the parking on Bridgeport in front of Whole Foods either. So issues that has been seen along here is the on-street parking, fills up very quickly. There's sleeper parking where people kind of park out on Market Street and stay there for very long periods of time. Some of these are employees that park out there from some of the businesses walking around. You just see it happen over time with people, with changing employees and people coming and going. Even when the business owners let their employees know, it's really hard for them to keep tabs of it all the time. So we see parking for extended periods of time on the prime retail parking spots. So with the parking and the congestion you see there, you will see a lot of circling happening and congestion going there. And we still are, I think, struggling, and even though there's been a lot of signage added, just trying to get awareness of the garage and that it's a free garage and all the entrances and elevators and access in and out of the garage. And I've put a couple pictures on here that I took, and I also, driving in this evening, I took a drive through at 5:30. There was one stall open all the way at the end down by Coldwell Banker, which is usually the less active spot, and then 2 ADA stalls were open in the whole stretch at 5:30 today. These couple of examples were walking through in the last couple weeks when they were completely full at these times, literally not a single stall at both of the times in the pictures there. And also like to point out that there are still approximately 17,000 square feet of commercial still left to be either built or leased within the village at Chambers Bay. So we have an issue, kind of growing now with the parking and obviously with the additional commercial that needs to be built out and finished, that will proceed to get worse. Next slide, please. So solutions that we were kind of considering from a staff standpoint regarding the parking is enforcement of existing time periods. So currently on Marketplace that we have 1-hour signage, but it is not really enforced and people are aware of that, so they do not follow that time period. We also have 15-minute signs located along the market square, and same thing, there's vehicles parked there for very long periods of time. When looking at possibly enforcement of those time periods, it requires hiring of enforcement personnel, as you have to have more people walking around. They have to keep track of license plate numbers and how long people have been there to be able to write a warning or a ticket. So it is a more costly way of regulating or management of the parking. And sometimes you might just become known as an area that just writes tickets, which is not, you know, the reasoning behind this at all. This is to manage the parking for the overall success of the retail. Another option that was looked at was a kind of a validation model. This would be something maybe similar to what Point Ruston does. Point Ruston's a little unique compared to the Village at Chambers Bay, as it's all private streets throughout Point Ruston, so they're able to have more control over that where our streets are public. This again is a very costly way to manage the parking, as it's technology intensive. You have to provide an iPad for every one of the businesses for somebody to come in to validate that they are there purchasing something. And how many people remember their license plate number all the time? So it's not as convenient for shoppers who might get frustrated as they walk in to buy their cup of coffee and forget their license plate number, have to run back out to their vehicle and try to remember it. And I think there's also chance for more abuse from employees that might just self-validate all day. You know, it's to keep them from entering in their parking. And with the technology intensive nature of this as well, they have vehicles down there that have cameras on them that drive around, that track all the license plate numbers, and then it pops up if they are expired or valid or good or bad. So it's pretty intensive when it comes to staffing and just the technology behind it. Parking meters, and this is the option we'll get into a little more detail a few slides from now. Parking meters is what we've looked at and seen used in other areas. And these are parking meters that would be located for each stall along Market Street. So we're talking individual meters, not pay stations, not something like Tacoma uses downtown where you have to walk to a pay station, you know, enter your information and then walk back and put a sticker on your car, or once again still remember your license plate number. That is not the most customer friendly experience. By placing the meters at the individual stalls, you can get out right from your vehicle, and you can either use coin, credit, or an app system to be able to pay for that parking stall. So, and then the other advantage to the parking meters, it is limited enforcement is needed, as you do not need somebody tracking how long a car has been parked there, because they go by, they see the meters either red or green. So they've either paid or they haven't. So they only would need to go through the area much less time to monitor it. We're thinking a couple of times during the 8-hour period that we'd be looking at.
One of the things just to add, in looking at the cost for the enforcement personnel for both the first two options, it's estimated probably at a minimum you would need one full-time employee to monitor, because of the documentation that has to establish when a car first parks and tracking when it's there. And so just from a rough cost estimate from that standpoint, kind of rough number is probably $100,000 from an enforcement standpoint if we were to go those routes. On the limited enforcement on parking meters, we have our code currently would allow, and we've talked to the security personnel that currently patrols our parking garage, and an option that we have there is they could in their say once an hour at no additional cost to our current contract, they would be available to go out, walk the street, and then could identify any citations that would be needed, could see the red and green. And so at least initially there's not anticipated increased cost for enforcement standpoint for the third option.
Next slide, please. I just On this slide, without naming all these, but just wanted to point out there's a long list of town center style developments across the country, really. Some of these you might be familiar with that we've looked at from a city and staff over the years, like Bethesda Row in Maryland, and used as examples to try to tailor our development off of from a Main Street design formula. And so I've got a list of ones from Easton Town Center to Bethesda Row on the left there that all have a similar type of setup with us, as they have the main retail street with parking on it. They meter that parking, and then they either have a garage or large surface parking lots behind the other buildings that are free and do not have time limits. And one other thing I found that's kind of unique or just in common, that these examples I show here, these are not in like some downtown metropolitan area. They're usually in a suburb or semi-suburb area outside of a major metropolitan area, similar to our style of development here with the Main Street. They're not all metered, so I did look and find a few out there that did have some hourly signage. Kent Station and Renton Landing were some local ones. They just have hour signups there. I do not know how much enforcement they really do on those, but they did have hour signs up there. Next slide, please. So going into the proposal for parking meters. One thing I'd like to say is this was something that was in a previous budget, so this would not take a new allocation of any budget or any change in any budget. It was in the 2021 budget cycle, so there is money that we've held over to implement this program. The proposal would be to place the meters on Marketplace with the 90-minute max enforced from 10 to 6, free on Sundays and free on holidays. The initial charge we'd be looking at would be $1 an hour, and you can purchase that in much smaller. You put a dime in for even smaller amounts, so it doesn't have to get purchased for an hour. So if you wanted to take the maximum of 90 minutes, it would be $1.50. Still have free parking without any real time limits in the garage and on Bridgeport Way. Market Square, the 8 stalls around Market Square, meeting and talking to the businesses, they really like, and we agree that need some drop-off, pick up your to-go order stalls within the village. And so those 8 stalls around Market Square would remain 15-minute stalls. However, now that we would be more actively enforcing on the meters, we would more actively enforce on those 15-minute stalls to ensure that people are not parking there all day. The idea, the best time to initiate a program like this is not this time of year when it's dark out or rainy or cold. So ideally you want to roll out a plan like this in this early or late spring, early summer. That way it's daylight more of the day, sun's out, it's not rainy, for people to get used to the program. The initial installation and setup cost is approximately $41,000. And once again, the proposal is meters and not pay stations. I feel the most customer-friendly way to help regulate the parking is with those individual meters for the stalls themselves.
And then just a few things to add on this. One thing to think about with parking meters, and we talk about a proposal for what the initial our thought for what the rate would be charged, and also Kevin will talk about potential revenues. It is important to think about this is parking meter, at least for what we're proposing or what's being proposed here, is not really the revenue source would be a byproduct. It's not the driving factor, and it's not the purpose. Really, the purpose for the meters would purely be for parking demand management. With that, we would have an initial cost, is what's proposed, about $1, which is what we've seen in some of these other areas seem to have been effective, and it's been more on the lower end of what we've seen. We've tried to be, propose something that would be fairly, certainly affordable. But then the theory is you want to maintain a parking fee that basically has about a target goal of about a 75% occupancy rate. So the idea is you would have at any given time, ideally 25% of the stalls available, so if somebody were driving down the street and wanted to park in one of the stalls, they would be able to find one readily. And so the parking fee would need to be, if we did go this route and implement meters, it would be something that would be a bit of a fluid, a fluid structure of, we'd need to be monitoring it, and if we're seeing all of a sudden nobody's parking there, the fee would need to drop. If we are seeing it's still completely full and we're not seeing the compliance, then the fee would need to increase. But those increase and decrease would not be based on revenue generation. It's purely just on creating enough parking availability so there would be availability for folks to come in there. Another thing to talk about in the proposal on that, initiate the program in the spring and summer. Part of the initiation of the program also would be a pretty significant public education process, because a lot of, and some of it speaks to what I just talked about, is that really this is not a revenue grab or trying to find ways to fund stuff. It's really how do you make it most available for parking available at convenience for customers and for the businesses, and just to let folks kind of show them why we're doing it, and also that there's the availability, free parking still out there. So that's also the advantage of having it start summer and spring type of thing. So.
And benefits of managing the parking out there. Each stall, if it turns over 10 times a day, is valued at generating $100,000 to $200,000 in sales for the village every year. And this is something that Bob Gibbs, who with Gibbs Planning Group, who has done consulting for the city back when we were coming up with the overall street layout with retail dimensions and where Market Street should be placed in adjacent to Bridgeport Way, so there was enough depth for retail buildings, helped with the layout of the parking structures we have. He consulted on many of those projects that I showed you from around the country, and he does a class back at Harvard every year regarding retail and Main Street design, and these are numbers that he's come up with from his years providing consulting and analyzing these types of developments. The other benefits, as we've talked about, it discourages the long-term parking and tries to get people into the garage that do want to stay for longer periods of time. It creates the percentage of open stalls, as Jack was talking about, that you'd like to see on the street, so that people don't just drive through and get frustrated every time they come here, and would be more than glad to just pay $1 to be able to come in and get parked quickly if they chose. And the other recommendation that Bob Gibbs talks about in his, when we've taken the class, is revenues generated. If there's any excess potential revenues generated as a goodwill at the council's discretion, it can be reinvested back into the center. It can be used for events. It can be used for landscaping. It could be used for security. So once again, it's not trying to use the tool to generate revenue for the city as it is as much as a benefit to the development to generate more revenue for the development itself and the retail businesses. Next slide, please. So I had a quick map here just to help kind of orientate yourself on the parking stalls we're talking about. The very top of the screen is Bridgeport Way, running from left to right, and then Market Place is in the middle, and it's kind of the lighter blue color. So the stalls out on Bridgeport Way, as I mentioned, would be free with really no time limit, because it is public right-of-way, the city can enforce after 5 days if there was an abandoned vehicle or whatnot there. 15-minute stalls are the pink color around Market Square, keeping those as those 15-minute stalls, not charging for that 15-minute and trying to encourage those used for the drop-off pickup. The metered stalls, 90 minutes, the light blue up and down Marketplace. And then the parking garage with the 800 stalls, 550 open to the public. And those 550 open stalls to the public do have a 72-hour time limit to keep people from using it just as storage for their vehicles. And there was some consideration and thought that we may, after talking to the businesses, we may want to consider some additional 15-minute stalls on Marketplace, maybe near the center of the development, as a couple of the businesses would like us to consider that. Next stall, please. Next stall.
Slide.
Parking stalls on my mind. The installation and setup costs. For the 30 meters, the quote we got is $28,000, and then another $10,000 or about to install the actual poles and for the decorative base and for the poles. The app setup for the mobile parking vendor is $3,000, so that's for the total of $41,170. They also have a flat rate. So for the 30 meters, it would be, and 30 meters, I will let you know there's 58 stalls, but some of the meters work for 2 stalls, which I'll show you a picture of here in a second. They have a meter management system called Sentinel that is about, I think it's $12 a meter a month, and that allows staff to track the meters. It gives you a notification if a battery gets low. It gives you a notification if the coin slot is jammed. It also helps you track on which ones are getting the most use, which is a big deal, which can help provide us data on how many people are parking where and how often they're being used. And it's real-time data. The meters are set up with 4G. They're solar powered. And so it's a pretty cool tool that would allow us to gather kind of data on the parking that's occurring in the area. And then the current, as Jack mentioned, the current enforcement could be done under peer security, under the current contract. And with the enforcement, we would still envision writing 3, 4, 5 warnings before a ticket would ever get written. And it would just be the blatant violators you'd really want to eventually ticket.
And that'd probably be more of a, because we wouldn't necessarily have, it's more of a time period. So it's like the first bit of going, we would issue the warnings. And I believe later on, after the program's established, we probably wouldn't have a way to track necessarily, because we're not going to be keeping track of license numbers. So probably after the program's established, then it's going to be more cut and dry, but we would want to have that kind of ease into it with the more warnings at the beginning of the part of the both education and rollout process.
The projected revenue, and I tried to do this conservatively with 54 stalls. There are 58 available, but if we chose not to put meters on the ADA stalls, or if we added some 15-minute stalls, at 54 stalls, if it's from 10 to 6 p.m., free on Sundays and free on holidays, if the stalls are full 75% of the time, it would generate approximately $97,000 a year. If the stalls are full 50% of the time, then it'd be $65,000 a year generated, and that's at $1 an hour with the 90-minute max.
Excuse me, Kevin, what was the second number again?
Second number is if the stalls are full 50% of the time, it would generate $65,232.
Thank you.
And that's the figure we're kind of targeting as a conservative, a conservative projection is kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah, you'll always have some overlap. I mean, you won't have somebody pulling in right after somebody leaves. And so there might be 5 minutes where a stall's open and then that person comes in. So even if the stalls, if you're walking through, look full at 70, 80% of the time, you might be only collecting money on that 65% of the time, as there's a little bit of lag between the person leaving and someone paying. Next slide, please. And just wanted to talk a little bit about the meter, and this is the type of meter that we've been looking at. This meter here is from a company called Beacon, from McKay Meters. This meter that you see here on this picture works for 2 stalls, and you can see in the picture, I believe there's an arrow on it, and you would just hit the arrow for which stall you're using, left or right. And then you could just immediately, once you do that, start putting in a quarters, and it'll start adding time for that one. Or if you're going to use a credit card, you would hit the plus sign, however long you wanted to stay, put in your credit card. There's a little light at the top that turns green, and away you go. These would also have a spot on it to be able to add a number for the stall itself, and that's how you would use your app. You could be in the car, you could see the stall number, pull it up on the app, and enter the stall number and enter the time you want to use.
There also is availability, and this was typical with this installation, of having custom both decals as well as some custom screens on the digital input. But the custom decals not only will allow us to, have the branding of either the center or the university place, but also provide some additional instructions for folks to both where it is, and then plus we would envision on each meter an additional sign being posted to remind folks that free parking is available in the garage and on Bridgeport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we could have a sign on the meter, near the meter, these meters help support the village landscaping, or help support, other things to help brand the meter itself. And this is more convenient than the pay stations. It needs less enforcement. It provides all the payment options that you can think of with the coin, credit card, or the app. And just to put a quote at the top, because I get a chuckle out of it when we talked to Mr. Gibbs, who did the consulting on this, and told him where we were at. And this was a couple years ago, pre-pandemic, when we were looking at this on some of the issues and about where we're at. And he just said, only place the meters in front of the retail you want to be successful.
One thing to reiterate also, that for what Bob Gibbs had said, it's important for these type of, if we go a route for meters, to have those multiple payment options, because it's not all folks and of all groups are comfortable with, although, you see in downtown Seattle, they're almost all app-based, but he's still finding that you want to make it as convenient, at least as convenient as possible for folks. And so if you're more comfortable paying with a coin or a credit card or an app, either way, you want to have all those options. And we have confirmed with the meter folks that, like if you did the app, it would fully communicate with the device, and so you put your stuff in and then it would turn green, or you put your quarter in, it turns green either way. So all of it would be the same, and so whatever each user is most comfortable or convenient for them, we'd try to have that. That's why you have the multiple payment options.
And a little bit more, just real quick on the meters. They are solar powered, so there would be no trenching needing to be done. So it'd be minimal impact to get them installed. You'd just be putting a fence post and then the sleeves on, and then the meters. This exact meter here is, they are currently putting in these meters for 1,000 stalls in Spokane. They currently service 10,000 stalls down in San Francisco. And they are in Vancouver, BC as well, and in multiple locations across the East Coast and in Canada. So it's a pretty big company and used in a lot of places.
And certainly one of my, when we first talked to these folks, one of my concerns was the solar power and the reliability. And certainly it made me feel much more comfortable that they're, at least a big portion of them are based in Vancouver. So we might be even a little sunnier than they are. So close, we're very close. But at least if it's working in Vancouver, it made me feel more comfortable that this is a good system.
Next slide, please. Just an example of the different payment options again with the meter. Pay by phone is one of the apps that is available, and Pay by phone is currently used by Seattle. That's the app that they use, and I believe Olympia uses that app. Tacoma uses an app called Flowbird. One of the complaints I've heard about that is they actually pass through a 25-cent charge to the person. I don't feel that's very customer friendly. But so we would look at the few different app options and try to choose one that maybe people are already using in the area.
One thing to note on this slide, this is a little bit, I think this is a slide we received from them previously. You will see on there they do note Apple Pay and Google Pay, and that actually is not currently an option. There's been a change in the in some the laws for how it pertains and how you collect it. So that's currently not an option. It's possible in the future, although of the different options, the Apple Pay or the Google Play, we kind of view it as if you don't have that, you still could do the other three, the cash, credit, or app are really the big three that you want to target.
Next slide, please. On January 5th, we held a meeting with 15 of the businesses located here. We did send invitations to all of them, and we sent similar PowerPoint to them to kind of go over the points that we went over today. We had 15 of them came to the meeting, asked them just, what you feel about this, asked them about their concerns with parking. The vast majority of them said very similar things to what we have mentioned about people parking there for extended periods of time. There's not enough parking available, them wanting the parking to turn over more often. They brought up, some concerns with wanting, some better signage, trying to get people in the garage if we implement this, so we can look at those options. We talked about the time frames that they would be looking at there. Would an hour be better? Would a half hour be better? Would 2 hours work the best for you? And is 10 to 6 the busiest time that you see it there? And what we were proposing here, the 10 to 6 and 90 minutes, everybody kind of settled on thinking that would be the best. You have like Orange Theory, Serenity Spa, Urban Float. They have about an hour time frames that they use, so an hour and a half would work good if any of their customers wanted to use it. 10 to 6 seems to be the busiest time frames out there in the parking. The nice thing is these are adjustable too. If 10 to 6 isn't the best time and we need to shrink that or increase that a little bit, we can do that very quickly if needed. But so the businesses were very comfortable with those time frames. They did ask us, Gallows Chicken asked if maybe there could be another 15-minute stall that they would consider, and Therapeutic and Associates and Urban Float asked about non-metering the ADA stalls and asking us to consider that as an option. I also, we received, and I believe, were they in the packet, the emails received in support of the proposal? We did receive emails from the library, from Urban Float, Serenity Spa, Gallows, Marketplace Flats Management, who's there, and from Verus. And Verus is the developer who developed Whole Foods and all the single-level retail, and is who is still developing and trying to lease the end of Lot 3 that is still left to be developed. And that concludes what I have.
Okay. I just want to add one real quick thing, and this just to address Councilmember Fleming's concern that when we last talked about this at the budget, we are still looking into, I know you had a concern about this, what happened in the past at Old Town, So we're still looking at that. I've reached out to my contacts at Tacoma, and so we're still trying to gather all the information on that. And so when we hear more, we will follow up with you on that. At least from what I have preliminary, at least I understand some of the advantage of this proposal over what was there is we do have the additional free parking available, and the meter system seems to be more convenient. But I don't have all the facts yet, and we'll certainly report back what we find to you.
Okay. Kevin and Jack, thank you. Just one question. You may have said this and I might have missed it. So just what is the estimated operating cost? So you gave us a couple of revenue targets, but what is the annual or monthly cost?
The initial monthly cost for the meter management system is $276. And then, did you want to elaborate on the enforcement cost?
Well, currently the enforcement should be, would be included. It wouldn't be an additional, unless it proved to be more than we're initially envisioning. But basically be able to patrol hourly, Pierce County Security, they're comfortable doing that, and they've done that past.
So at least over the near term, no direct cost for the enforcement, and then meters get broken, meters get stolen,
Yep.
And they look great in a basement.
Yep.
But
So there would be some, we would need a budget and plan for maintenance and repair and replacement.
Yeah.
They do recommend having a few spare batteries on hand, although they feel pretty comfortable with their reliability, but they say that's just prudent to do. The other thing that we don't have an exact number is, depending on which app service we go with, there may be whether it's a per transaction charge or a monthly charge. It depends on the service, and that's something we still have to, once we kind of identify what's the best option there, we would know that a little better. But there would be some, but typically my understanding is that is tied to the per transaction type of thing. So
okay. So one could look at it as kind of tied to revenue and a direct correlation to that. And then for our city attorney, for Matt, these are infractions, they're civil infractions?
They would be civil infractions. Under your current code, you have two flavors of parking infractions. One carries a fine of $100, the other carries a $50 fine. This appears to fall under that $50 fine category. If council wanted to revisit that, you could certainly do that via ordinance. I would separately recommend that you may want to take a look at the parking code just once more with feeling anyway, because I did catch a few things as I was looking at it with the defense attorney eye on how would I challenge this. So there's a few nuances in there, but certainly we'll want to have that discussion if you want to, where you want to put the fine.
So we don't have a court administrative cost tied to parking ticket and processing?
We haven't fully scoped that with district court yet. I can tell the council, certainly with one of the other jurisdictions I'm aware of, with photo enforcement, they have charged via an addendum to that court services contract. We'll need to revisit that and see if they would separately charge.
Okay. All right, good enough. Thank you. Just wanted to get that on the table too. All right, well, Councilmember McCluskey, would you like to start us?
Okay. Yes, thank you. The app, there could be an ancillary charge to that. What about the credit cards when the customer uses the credit cards? 'Cause there is
I believe that is typically
like 3% or something?
It's like a 1 to 5%, somewhere in that range.
Correct. I was going to say 2 or 3%.
Okay, and so right now, the city will absorb those costs into that?
Yeah, and each of those would be based on the payment collection anyway. And so that would just come off of the revenue. So it wouldn't be a additional charge. It just would reflect on how much the net would be.
Right, and so you're going to get an itemized statements from the vendor? And then how are we going to get paid for the parking?
So so for the credit cards, it would go straight to, basically like if we charge a credit card for a permit, so that would just go straight to us. The vendor it's a similar type of thing. It goes, they're basically just the framework and the software, but the pay by phone is still ultimately it's paid by the credit card, and so we would get it'd go back as a credit card revenue, just like any kind of thing. So it would go, kind of an automatic thing. It doesn't, the money doesn't
Okay.
filter through anything other than a credit card. And then the coins, we would envision, I think the initial, even if it's highly used, the meter representative envisioned probably about a weekly is how often you would need to empty the,
Go empty that.
collect coins. But
Okay. More likely, people use their plastic or the app.
that's what he's finding, yeah.
I like the most user-friendly app as possible. I've had issues with some other apps. And my phone talking to the meter itself, so it doesn't like to sometimes acknowledge my cell phone,
Yeah.
which is very frustrating. And I've seen others in the same predicament, so it's just not my phone. And so the most user-friendly, most reliable, and that would be my take on that. And then, Matt, we'll get back with the enforcement piece, because that was one of my questions too, is that. And I do agree that parking meters would increase the business's sales and the opportunities for other business to be interested in actually developing and their business on Market Square, because it is a challenge even before we were built out to this point that we are as well. The other thought I had was to encourage and also create a change behavioral model so that people won't, sometimes people just don't want to go into a garage because they think it's dark and unsafe, to sort of change that image of that. I know ours is pretty well lit, but maybe some music in it, just to change a little bit of the ambiance. Because I was at the Victoria Gardens in California, and it is very well lit. There's even some open air parking in there as well. There isn't any music though. But there's enough population and people in there to make you feel safe. There's always some people coming and going, and not so likely here at our Market Square. Piece to that. I would initially go into no meters on AD&A unless we see that there is a situation or a problem with the ADA cars, going excessively parking. They have such a challenge getting in and out of their cars already, and then to go over to an app and figure that out. So let's on the onset try that out. I like the idea of reinvesting the money and putting the signage on the meter so the people will know exactly where it's going, and it's in that center where they're hopefully enjoying it. And that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, followed by Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Kevin and Jack, thank you again for the presentation and for more information. I truly appreciate the effort you all have put into that. I just have, you answered one question, and I've got two left on here. One is on this monthly monitoring at $12 a month per stall per 54 or 58 stalls. Who pays that? And out of what budget? Because I don't believe that's part of our budget at the moment. So do we have to make an adjustment for that, or where do we pull that money from?
Right now, that would be, that would still fall under the, in the amount that's adopted for parking meters, it's in that. We have sufficient funds to cover that. Ideally, you would have enough, even with the kind of conservative, like 50% revenue projections, ultimately it would be envisioned that the revenues would from an ongoing standpoint cover that. But from an initial, and if there were we talked about having several months of being more kind of grace period or being more more warning signs and that warning issues, maybe you would have potentially less revenue those early months. then we have money in the adopted budget to cover that if we need it.
Okay. And to Councilmember McCluskey's point, I've been to Santana Row. They do play music in the parking
Oh, this
garage.
is Victoria Gardens.
Nobody said, yeah, but at Santana Row, they do
Oh, they
play
do?
it.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're more upscale. Right.
Well, they even have a chandelier in their parking garage, but
Oh.
what the heck. One question I also.
Wow, that's a great idea.
Oh, boy. It's a world of its own. On your slide, Kevin, it said this meter accepts worldwide coins. So you can put any coin from any country in this machine. Is our machine going to allow that? And if so, how are we going to make that conversion?
I believe it's a company based out of Canada, so they're international. So I think what they're saying there is in Canada to take Canadian coins. It's set up where they will set it up in the U.S. to only take U.S. coins.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Canadian
Okay.
pennies.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Wood, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've got a few questions, comments. First, thank you for this presentation. You're both well aware that I'm not a huge fan of adding parking meters, but you're doing a good job of chipping away at my questions and resistance. But I do have a few more. And I think you might have mentioned this at the very end, and I might not have caught it. Will parking restrictions assist with that remaining build-out of 17,000 square feet you mentioned? What are you hearing from businesses? Is that an attractive thing to have or a barrier?
Certainly, we know it was a struggle for Verus to get because they have the Five Guys have signed a lease and are coming in, in that last vacant space we have in the current building. And parking was a big issue for them, and the fact that that's been at least a consideration and a budget item for council was what ultimately convinced them to come here, is that we would be working on some sort of parking management. And so just using that as an example, I would envision the next guys down the road having to, as more gets built, it's only going to be amplified with each successive business coming.
And I'll just quote from Rob Andrews, who's the managing partner from Verus here on his. The number one issue we have to address with potential retail tenants has to do with convenient on-street parking. Short-term managed parking will help to ensure the long-term health of the retailers along Market Street. So they feel that managing the parking will only help them get their leases signed.
All right, and then with that, let me see here. Next question I had, and I mentioned this before when we met on this one. We're making some assumptions here on the success of this. We're assuming that we're going to increase traffic turnover. We're going to assume that turnover increases business, and that increased business increases revenue. How are we going to test those assumptions if we put these parking meters in? 6 months later, how are we going to know if this is working or not?
On the I'll address the parking turnover, and then I'll let Kevin address the business side of things. But so the app, like Kevin mentioned, that comes with the parking meters, that is a tool that can be used. It basically will tell us what which meters are being used, what's the occupancy rate, all that sort of thing. So that's going to be readily in real time us to be able to analyze that. So we'll have that data at our fingertips immediately. And so we'll be able to monitor that. And it's crucial to monitor because we need to adjust the rates to be appropriate. And then, Kevin, I don't know, from a revenue standpoint?
It would be tough to make that exact determination. Adding parking meters, there will be some upset people. I think most of the upset people will probably be the people who have been taking advantage of it. And I'm sure some people will be a little vocal about it. So it'll be unpopular, except for the true customers coming in, trying to get in, spend their money, and leave. My only thing on that, on revenue, on what it's generating, I would plan on through the Economic Development Commission and with the businesses. We've got a good outreach with the businesses. I'd be talking to them every 3 months, 6 months, and hold another meeting with them and ask them how it's working. And we are fully prepared to do that because even if it's working as well as we hope, it may take some adjustment, like in the times, 10 to 6 may not be the right time after a year, and I want to hear from the businesses and if that's working. So my best on that to find out on their revenue is to talk directly to the businesses and ask them how they're doing this year compared to last year or next year compared to this year.
Okay. And then speaking of the businesses, did you get any, you sent us, thank you for the emails from businesses that said they support this. Did you get any emails from anybody saying they didn't?
I got, there was an email that came in late, and I'll be happy to forward it on, that was from the medical clinic, and they didn't attend the meeting. We sent them all the information, so some of the questions she had, I think, would have been resolved at the meeting. She felt that they just mentioned some of their, people coming there are sick and may not want to come through the garage if they're not feeling well. And they had concerns, evidently, it sounds like maybe some of their clients may not be able to pay for, $1 for the hour. So I can have those further discussions with them on that. But I would kind of make the counter argument a little bit that there's no parking for their customers now. So they're all having to, get forced in the garage or drive around and get frustrated. And this will only make it more convenient for their customers. And to list specific examples, one of their employees blatantly parks in the 15-minute stalls all the time and the hour stalls. And I think the office manager tells them not to, but sometimes they just still do it. So we did get one, and I'll be happy to forward that on.
Okay, and then just a couple comments just at the end here. You asked about the ADA stalls. I would support not metering those if we go this route. I'd also recommend that for major events in the area, tree lighting, something like that, we remove the requirement for paying parking because that just adds an extra barrier to people showing up. I do have one more question. Security. Mentioned, the thieves are getting incredibly creative, and their capabilities to destroy things in the process of stealing is amazing. What about security concerns if we're picking up the coins once a week? Yeah, it's not a whole lot of coins, but I've seen people do thousands of dollars of damage for $10 in money. Yeah. How do we manage that? How secure are these posts? Do you know anything about that or have any data?
According to the vendor, it's very, itself is quite secure. They haven't had a lot of problems with someone being able to break into it. From a standpoint of when the person's changing it out, right now we're envisioning just doing it by staff, but we'd do it with multiple. Not a single person would do it, and we do it in brighter conditions. Not at night kind of thing. But that certainly is a concern, and that's something we'd have to evaluate still of how we. I think the security of the coin collection is still something we'll have to make sure we have proper procedures and safety precautions in place.
Okay. And then one last comment. You mentioned signs that say, hey, if it's going to support this area, that's a good idea. I'd also like maybe per meter a sign on it that just says, don't want to pay, free parking this way, on each single meter, so people don't have to look for the one little board that's sitting out there.
Yeah.
So that'd be a thought if we go this route. And Mayor, that concludes my questions and comments. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, and followed by Councilmember Bellisi.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have an option to not have a money meter?
Oh, you need your mic on.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
Hold on a second.
you're on.
I'm on. Do we have an option to not have a money meter where it's only cards or, okay. I would be more supportive toward that because I think that the money, the dollars, they sound, I can argue with a guy that you want to make it really convenient. It's only for the 0.02% that maybe. So why go through that hassle of having that, making people think you have the security, but having two people to have to get the cash, you have the, and Wood is correct. For $5, someone that's freaking out, don't destroy it. 3 o'clock in the morning, guarantee you. So why go there for what? so small a percentage of people that say, well, that's how I want to pay. Nah, and not for the inconvenience and the trouble and the vandalism and all that. We're just asking for it. It's like we tell people, don't leave articles in your car inside the car, put it in the trunk, okay? People still do it. We need to take our advice and, okay, let's just, that's my take on that. That being said, though, to help out with the credit card, or I hope that they do Apple Pay sometime, but I think that, is it possible, since it's all electronic and software, for them to create a city parking card, electronic card that people can prepay, just like any other retailer. They prepaid it, they can pay it, they can buy it at any retail store around here or the city, and load it up, and then they can go and tap it or insert it and pay for it. And to me, that option would take care of the rest that didn't want to use their card for whatever reason, or don't have a card, because there are some young people, like 16-year-old, that may not have a card. And I understand that in that case, we want to still accommodate everybody, right? But, so I think in that case, you still give them an option. It's easy for a kid, I mean, for a young adult to do that, or someone that can't get a credit card to get that at a retailer. And if the medical center or any retailer says, I want to give out this cards free if you come and shop here, or I'll preload it for $5 or whatever, they give that card. So I prefer to see that happen than the cash and the dollars and the coins and all that.
Well, certainly, we'll reach out to the vendor and see if that's a possibility. And then on the coins, I know I certainly, when I first heard about this, was in the same thought as you. And then the only thing is, and we may want to reach out to Bob Gibbs, the fellow that we first talked about, because he was very, based on his experience, very adamant about it. But we'll ask the question, and plus, as coins become less and less used, things may have changed. So we'll verify.
Very adamant about things. They were very, very intelligent, very high profile, very influential, and they were dead wrong. So,
Yep.
If they were all correct, I would say, okay, there's a history there, but there's also a big history of some very smart people that just didn't get it. I mean, didn't have it right.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
This is one of those times I feel that I can argue that point. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. Councilmember Felici.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation tonight. You answered a lot of the questions I had regarding this. As a resident of the village, I do know that parking is an issue here in Market Square. I've heard from people that want to come visit me on a short-term basis, drop something off, not being able to find parking, and going into a garage to do a drop-off or a pickup order is extremely inconvenient for them. So having the ability to have free spaces, I can see being a great benefit not only to myself as a resident, but to the businesses in this complex. I would like to have some reports from the businesses that are in favor of this as to how it has impacted their business, from a look back to the process as we're potentially, if we move forward with this, implementing it, what kind of impact, what kind of comments their customers are making in regards to it, to just see if it is a feasible thing. I would like to challenge the city to do a real proactive outreach if we do choose to do this, and spend a month or two just papering cars out there and letting them know that this is coming with detailed diagrams of where the free parking is and how to read the signs to get there. And we might think about painting the stairwell or the elevator wells for the public access elevators. I think that might help visually when people come into the parking, maybe making them bright red. And all the business owner has to say or resident has to say is use the red shaft, the red, go to the area of the parking garage where there's red painted walls. That's the elevator to access the main level, because I know that is one of the biggest problems and complaints that I hear from people, that trying to figure out how to navigate and get to Market Square from the various levels of the parking garage. I've heard it also from people that visit me on a long-term basis, trying to figure out where to park and how to get up into the building. We've done the signage thing, and for some reason people can't seem to drive and read it at the same time. I don't know. Councilmember Figueroa, I hate to differ, but I think cash should be an option if there's a way, as cash potentially wanes and people feel more comfortable using credit cards and apps, that we could do away with it. But I know a number of seniors, a number of people my own age, younger people, that are hesitant to use credit cards for small transactions because of theft of credit card numbers, et cetera, and would much prefer an app or even cash for short-term small dollar amounts. So I do think it is an option. I do know that it seems fairly safe on Market Square. I am on there daily, 2-3 times a day. I haven't seen cars broken into during the day. There at night, I know tenants have a tendency to park overnight out on Market Square, and I have not heard or seen any cars being broken into and vandalized since I have lived in the complex. And my apartment, it faces right over Marketplace, so I hear all the noise. I do have concerns, however, with 5-story buildings, the solar power ability. Light does not get onto Market Square until 2 o'clock in the afternoon for the entire width of Market Square. So how, I would have concerns about at least the eastern side of the street getting enough light during the day to power up those meters. And Vancouver is, I hate to say it, but Vancouver, BC is sunnier than Seattle, Tacoma area is. They're kind of like in that little flood zone, light zone, the banana belt. So using them as an example for it is, I would be a little bit hesitant on that one. But yeah, my biggest concern is on the solar panel and having enough light access with a 5-story building blocking that for the majority of the day. So I would definitely encourage you to triple check that one. But as long as the businesses are in support of it, and we've done enough education, should we decide to move forward with this by informing the community and doing the changes we need to in our parking garages, ensuring that the privately owned part of the parking garage is equally signed and coded or whatever, that we have some consistency, and that those elevator accesses are consistently open for the same time periods that the main elevator is open, I think is crucial, because I know people hesitate to go into the elevator, come out on the Civic Building, and then the elevators, the access to the elevator that they came on is cut off. So we need to be real diligent about that, to make sure that people get comfortable, not only during the meter time, but the entire business time. And hopefully we will have businesses that stay open later in the evening as we get more people coming and getting more turnover. So thank you for your presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember. And then Councilmember Keel.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. The 5th or 6th time is the charm, I guess, hearing it. I do think you believe that that I am a proponent of parking, pay for parking. I think it's an idea that's time to come here in our city. It's from what I can see, it's very much supported by the businesses that are that are here. They have said to me, and in your reporting consistently over and over again, that they believe that it's something that's going to be a direct support to the growth of their economics and their business. And you know, they're the ones that are there. They're the ones that have put their own money up for their business. They're the ones that have, you know, taken the risks and working with us. And I think I'm trying to listen to what they're saying about parking. And so we put them up front and say we need to listen to them on all things, that on every other thing. Why wouldn't we listen to them on the parking as well? So I'm in full support of that. Having said that, I do agree with many of my colleagues that talk about, you know, making sure that we do what we need to do to support that, and that is making sure that we do the research around the timing, the times, the amount that people pay, you know, how long we leave things open, when do we turn them off, so that in the case of events in the city that, you know, there's no parking, you know, color coding things. You know, making sure that all of the parking and all of the elevators and all the doors all work together seamlessly so that people can get from here to there within the time frame that things are going. And I can tell you that I've been, I will say victim. I've been the victim of when those things didn't work right. You know, where I was stuck someplace and I was like, how do I get out of here? You know, and so it is frustrating. And if I didn't have to come to this building, I probably wouldn't have come back. So I think there's that whole piece of it. So it is a good thing. I think we need to be cognizant of the customers that we're serving and the citizens that we're serving, and that we make it an enjoyable event so that will want to come back. I also like, in particular, I like what Councilmember Wood was talking about, the little signs on every meter that says, if you don't want to pay, go, here's where the free parking is, that kind of thing. The last thing about free parking, we've heard this early on, is around lighting, you know, making sure there's enough light in the parking garage, and I'm glad, you know, you guys did something with the paint where you did lighter painting and you added some higher fluorescent lights. So I think, you know, being cognizant of that, we may need to invest in having more patrols, you know, instead of just having the one guy or gal walk around, maybe there's two and they're kind of, you know, doing this one end of the thing, so I mean, as people start using it more and more, I think the feeling of safety is going to be key in that garage as well. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Excuse me. And so my comments, and I'll try and be succinct about these. I had some questions. They've been answered. Thank you. The fact is, I think this is worth pursuing, and I think it's necessary more than any other alternative. It's a common problem, and it's a product of being successful. If we didn't have the demand for folks being out there on the street, we wouldn't have this problem. But the demand's here, and we want to be able to manage it and help our businesses who invest in our community be successful, and our citizens and their customers be able to get parking that's appropriate to them. If you need to be here a long time, it's a free garage. It's a little harder to get a better value than that. If you're coming in to do some quick business, you're more likely to be able to do that. And employees, as much as you try and tell them don't park in front of the store, they're going to go park in front of someone else's store, and the issue is just down the street. So that's all of these things get to be addressed by the parking meter system. It looks like there's a few things, though, that I'd like to see if we can't consider for outcomes. And one of them is, I too am concerned about the solar issue. It would be great if it works, but I can think of about 3 different sets of solar lights along my driveway. And I have yet to find the one that does. So that doesn't mean it won't work in Market Street, but we should run a test, see whatever it is we can do. And if it isn't going to work, what is the backup for us? Does that mean we change batteries every week, every month? I don't know. That's someone else's affair, but just to be able to have a plan B if those are the meters that we need. The coin issue, I'm back and forth on that one. I can see the current convenience. I don't think, I have stopped carrying coins some years ago, frankly, and now, anyhow, I do something with them, but I don't carry them with me. They have little direct purpose. But some people do, and I can appreciate the need to consider that over the near term. They are a temptation, and perhaps regularly emptying the coins will be a little less of a problem if we do that, if we choose to have that. I think the system, more importantly, needs to be nimble and something that we can adjust as we see the need to adjust. And if pricing isn't working, if the hours don't work, we have some way to relatively quickly make an adjustment to make it the parking demand a tool that is really what it's all about. I also think we need about a year of operation to get through over a couple of different humps before we start an evaluation process of any a deep evaluation. But we should be ready to make those measurements and know what it is that how it is working for our businesses here. And certainly part of that's going to be fine-tuning existing regulations. They were written in an environment where we didn't really think much about meters and such. I was curious, by the way, this is just a side comment. I wonder if our police have infraction tickets. I'm kind of curious about that. They would have some things to write up, but civil infraction maybe not, whatever. We won't have to worry about that for a while. And ADA, having a couple for ADA, fine. I think the ADA placard gives them, at least in other parking meter situations, the ability to park without having to pay the meter. Is that how the ADA placards work? Well, I don't, I'm just, yeah, ADA, if you have an ADA placard, you can park at a street meter without having to pay, a parking meter without having to pay it?
Varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
It does vary, okay, so it's a jurisdictional decision. Okay, yeah, I don't know, I haven't dealt directly with that. I have a friend in Spokane who does use an ADA placard, and I know in her case, they allow for parking at meters for an extended period of time, so things to work out. But all in all, I hope we are able to move forward and address the need that our businesses are feeling and contribute to their success. So, anybody else before we move on to our next item?
Yeah,
Councilmember McCluskey.
Yeah, real quick, I know you mentioned 50% stalls full, that's 65 plus grand per year. Is there any way we could validate that on the current dynamics we have on our street? Or,
well, right now it's 100% full.
Right.
Although we couldn't, we didn't want to show that as revenue because if we're still 100% full, we're doing something wrong with our parking demand management.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really just based on number of stalls and the hours of operation. Once again, even if it was 50% full only, we're also doing something wrong. So we would need to adjust things at that point too.
Okay, well, my question is more, how realistic is that number in Market Square? I understand the 50%, as average, and if in other worlds, what about our world? How realistic is that at $1 every 90 minutes?
It's going to be now. So
$1.50 rather.
Yeah, so
$1 an hour.
We've looked at least other communities and other areas that have used it. The challenge for us is, these would be the first parking meters in our community, and so everyone's a little different. It would be certainly cheaper than like Tacoma charges, and way cheaper than like Seattle, but we're not at Tacoma or Seattle. But when we've looked at areas like some of those other like developments like Kevin had looked into, the $1 an hour is what the folks are recommending and saying that's a good starting point and what's typically not viewed as a barrier so much. But it could go, if we're seeing only 50% occupancy, we're charging too much and it should go down, right? And so that's where it's really, and that's where I'm kind of, we show what the revenue projections could be, but it's really not it shouldn't be viewed as a revenue
It's
generator.
not realistic for Market Square yet.
Well, we don't know, right?
Right,
It's-
right, we don't know.
it's-
Well, my concern is that we don't go in the red. Haha.
Yeah. And I think
that.
the concept that we're looking at is we don't envision, I think we're,
cheeky.
you know, most of the ongoing costs would be tied to actual revenue collected, other than, you know, the, like the security is already a cost we're having. The other things, whether it's the app charge or the credit card charge, those are based on how much revenue. So if you're not getting as much, you're not paying as much. And so for the most part, that's all governed from a cost standpoint that way. But ideally, you're able to kind of, like Councilman or Mayor Worthington said, you have to be very dynamic in what your pricing is to make sure you don't have big vacancy issues.
And as, from what you said earlier, our fixed cost would appear to be less than $300 a month.
Yeah.
And so that's $20 a day, and well, it's $10 a day in revenue in the average. So hopefully, if there's any demand out there, that should get covered. So.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? We're good. It's time for us to talk about affordable housing. We're going to get started with that, and then we'll pause if necessary to extend the meeting. For what?
For what, bathroom break?
Council, that
like
sounds like a
that.
wonderful idea. So
I'm
let's
all in favor.
take
I'm
a
all in.
recess for 5 minutes. So,
Yes,
and we'll convene at 10 till the hour, okay?
right.
Back in session after a brief recess, and it's approximately 10 till the top of the hour.
Mayor, Mayor, may I have the floor?
Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Considering the time of the hour and the conversation that can be held in this particular agenda item, I'd like to make I'm making a motion that we extend, pass this agenda item to the next meeting so that it can be studied. I don't think that we would finish talking about this item in the next 15 or 20 minutes or even a half an hour. And I don't think that most of us want to be here at 10 o'clock. And even then, we might not finish. So I'd like to suggest that Mr. Sugg in his one-on-ones answer as many questions as possible so that when we do go into study, we can go through it fairly quickly and be done with it. I know there's a time issue with the county in their March 7th meeting, but I believe that we can meet that timetable. Prior to that, we have 2 meetings in February, and if we have to, 1 meeting in March before they even look at it and discuss it. So I think we still have some time. So I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, so I understand the motion is to carry this next item over to the next regular meeting as a study item. Is there a second?
And then just to table it to the next meeting?
Yes.
Essentially, yes.
Councilmember Belisi will second that one.
All right, we have a motion and a second. And excuse me, did we change this to a table, in which case there is no debate? Do I have that right?
The table is a motion. The motion is to table to a date certain, and I was actually just trying to figure out the majority vote, which it seemed to be, but non-debatable. Right.
Yeah, my recollection is it's non-debatable, in which case we go to vote. So,
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, all those in favor of tabling this item to the next regular meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
All right.
Nay.
And I'm going to look to the clerk to help us determine, or I can make a determination. That motion passes, and the item is carried on to the next, tabled until the next regular meeting.
I couldn't explain why I voted no, but it would have been good information, but
He's staying up late.
Now I'm very curious.
Yeah, seriously. I was just interested in having the presentation of what that, because I don't have a clue what it is. I mean, I know it's housing, but it would have been great to take 3 minutes to say, here's the issue. And then I could have walked away with questions and stuff like that. That's all I wanted. But
Yeah, and I agree it would have been helpful.
Yes.
I'm just not sure that I could figure out a path to get there and within the rules.
Within
that
the
I
rules,
understand.
yeah, no, I got it.
All right. Well, with that, though, I think that concludes our business for this evening, and I look forward to seeing everyone Saturday the 28th at First Golf Club around 8 o'clock for breakfast. Have a great night.
Is that in February?